Have you ever stood at the precipice of something magnificent? A promotion within reach? A relationship blossoming beyond expectation? Or a creative endeavor finally gaining momentum? Only to feel a strange, inexplicable dread washing over you? That moment when success isn't just knocking, but practically breaking down your door, and instead of jubilation, you feel a quiet panic, an urge to retreat, to sabotage, to run. It's the paradox that haunts our potential. We claim to chase success with every fiber of our being, yet when its shadow looms largest, something ancient and powerful within us recoils. This isn't the fear of failure that we so readily admit to. It's its more complex, more insidious counterpart, the fear of success itself, a silent saboteur that has likely been orchestrating your retreats from greatness without you ever knowing its name. Success carries a weight that failure never does, the weight of becoming more than you are now. When we fail, we remain safely within the boundaries of our known self, our familiar identity intact. But success? Success demands transformation. It requires you to shed old skins, abandon comfortable limitations, and step into an expanded version of yourself that feels as foreign as it does frightening. This metamorphosis triggers a primal resistance, a psychological immune response to protect the self you've carefully constructed over decades. The mind creates elaborate defenses against this transformation. You might find yourself procrastinating just as the finish line comes into view, picking fights with supporters when their belief in you grows too strong, or developing mysterious ailments before important presentations. These aren't random occurrences, but sophisticated sabotage mechanisms designed to keep you safely contained within familiar territory. Your psyche would rather you remain comfortably mediocre than dangerously exceptional. What Nietzsche called the spirit of gravity, that downward pull that keeps us from soaring, isn't external but woven into our psychological fabric. We carry invisible anchors fashioned from childhood messages, cultural programming, and the accumulated weight of every time we were told explicitly or implicitly to temper our ambitions, to not outshine others, to stay within the bounds of what's expected. Success threatens to snap these chains, and part of you fears the vertigo of such sudden freedom. Consider how often you've rehearsed failure in your mind, the detailed scenarios of rejection, criticism, or inadequacy. Now compare that to how rarely you've allowed yourself to fully imagine success, not just achieving a goal, but living daily in the reality that follows. This asymmetry reveals a telling discomfort with the latter, as though success were a foreign language your mind refuses to become fluent in. The fear manifests in subtle distortions of perception. When opportunity expands, you might suddenly find yourself fixating on potential downsides, manufacturing problems where none exist, or mentally amplifying the burdens that accompany achievement. What if I can't handle the responsibility? Becomes the whispered mantra, drowning out the more empowering question. What if I'm more capable than I've allowed myself to believe? There's a peculiar comfort in familiar limitations. Like a prisoner who's spent decades in a cell, the prospect of open space can trigger not exhilaration, but terror. Your constraints, your excuses, your carefully constructed narrative about why certain achievements remain beyond reach. These form the walls of a psychological cell that, while limiting, provide the security of defined boundaries and lowered expectations. Remember that promotion you hesitated to apply for, convincing yourself you weren't ready? That relationship where you created conflict just as intimacy deepened? That creative project you abandoned right as it gained momentum? These weren't failures of ability, but successes of self-sabotage, moments when your fear of becoming more than you are overpowered your desire to grow beyond current limitations. The most insidious aspect of this fear is how it disguises itself as prudence, as humility, as realistic thinking. I'm just being practical, you tell yourself, as you scale back ambitions that once set your soul on fire. But beneath this rationalization lies a deeper truth. Success would require you to outgrow the identity you've invested so heavily in maintaining, and part of you would rather remain small than face the disorientation of becoming larger. What you fear isn't the achievement itself, but the transformation it demands. The death of the self you know to make room for the self you might become. As Jung observed, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Success forces precisely this acceptance, not just of your limitations, which failure comfortably confirms, but of your capabilities, which success unavoidably reveals. Success places you on a pedestal, and pedestals are precarious places to stand. To succeed is to become visible, to step out from the protective shadows of mediocrity into the harsh spotlight of attention. This visibility triggers one of our most primal social fears, the fear of being truly seen. In failure, we can hide. In success, we are exposed, not just our talents, but our flaws, not just our strengths, but our inevitable inadequacies. Kierkegaard spoke of the dizziness of freedom, that vertiginous feeling when possibilities expand beyond our ability to comprehend them. Success creates precisely this dizziness, removing the comfortable constraints that have both limited and defined us. Without these familiar boundaries, we face the existential anxiety of authoring our own story, of becoming responsible for our own becoming in ways that failure never demands. The expectations of others form invisible chains that grow heavier with each achievement. You fear success because you intuitively understand that each victory raises the bar for the next performance. The applause that feels affirming today becomes the standard you must meet tomorrow. The praise that warms you now becomes the expectation that will burn you later when you inevitably fall short of perfection. Consider how often you've dimmed your light in social situations, downplayed accomplishments, or deflected compliments. These aren't merely expressions of humility, but protective measures against the isolation that excellence can create. Success separates you from others, marking you as different, and humans are tribal creatures who feel the pain of exclusion more acutely than almost any other psychological wound. The imposter syndrome that haunts so many high achievers isn't a cognitive distortion, but an intuitive recognition of a painful truth: that success often outpaces our self-concept, creating a dissonance between who we believe ourselves to be and who others perceive us to be. This gap generates a constant fear of being found out, of the world discovering that you aren't as capable as your achievements suggest. There's a peculiar loneliness that accompanies success, the isolation of the summit. As you climb higher, the air grows thinner, companions fewer. You fear losing connection with those who knew you before, those who loved you when you were smaller, less accomplished, less intimidating in your capabilities. Part of you wonders, if I fully succeed, who will remain to witness it? Who will still see me, not just my achievements? The weight of representing others' hopes can become unbearable. Family members who sacrificed for your education, communities that claim you as their success story, mentors who invested in your potential. Their expectations form an invisible audience watching your every move. Success means performing not just for yourself, but for all who have pinned their dreams on your shoulders. Most painfully, success forces a confrontation with the question of worthiness. When you achieve what you've pursued, when external validation finally arrives, the spotlight turns inward. Do I deserve this? Am I enough? The fear isn't that you'll fail to reach your goals, but that upon reaching them, you'll discover they weren't enough to fill the void they were meant to address. That success itself will unmask the emptiness it was supposed to cure. As Camus noted, "In the midst of winter, I found there was, within me, an invincible summer." But the inverse is equally true. In the midst of success, many discover an unconquerable winter, a persistent emptiness that achievement cannot warm. This is perhaps the most frightening prospect of all, that success might reveal not your inadequacy, but the inadequacy of success itself to provide the meaning and fulfillment you've assigned to it. Success isn't just an event, but a contract, an unspoken agreement to become the person your achievements suggest you are. When you succeed, you tacitly promise to maintain that level, to embody that capability consistently, to become the person worthy of that success. This is the hidden burden that makes the prospect of achievement so quietly terrifying. Not just having to do more, but having to become more. You sit at your desk late at night, a promotion letter waiting for your signature. It offers everything you've worked toward: recognition, influence, financial security. Yet your hand hesitates over the page, your mind spinning elaborate scenarios of failure, of being overwhelmed, of being exposed as inadequate. What holds you back isn't fear of the position itself, but fear of the person you must become to truly inhabit it. Someone more confident, more decisive, more visible than you currently believe yourself to be. Frankl observed that meaning comes not from what life offers us, but from what life asks of us. Success asks more of us than failure ever does. It demands growth, consistency, and integrity. It requires us to live up to our potential not just in moments of inspiration, but in the daily grind when no one is watching. This constant demand to rise to the occasion creates a pressure that many find unbearable. Easier to avoid success than to face the ongoing responsibility it brings. The narrative of the overnight success is perhaps the most damaging myth in our culture, obscuring the truth that real achievement isn't a destination, but a commitment to a path of continuous becoming. You fear success because intuitively you understand that true success isn't reaching the mountain peak, but learning to breathe comfortably at higher altitudes. A permanent expansion of your capacity that can never be reversed. Consider how often you've approached the threshold of a significant breakthrough only to retreat into comfortable routines, familiar struggles, or self-created chaos. These aren't failures of nerve, but unconscious strategies to avoid the responsibility that accompanies expansion. There's a strange comfort in remaining potential rather than kinetic energy, in being someone who could rather than someone who did, because the former preserves the option of retreat. The most profound shift success requires isn't external but internal, a fundamental revision of your self-concept. The stories you've told yourself about your limitations, your wounds, your reasons for playing small. Success renders these obsolete, demanding new narratives that accommodate your demonstrated capability. This rewriting of identity is profoundly disorienting, like suddenly finding yourself speaking a language you didn't know you knew. Have you noticed how achievement often triggers not celebration, but a strange emptiness? A what now? Sensation that can feel like disappointment? This isn't evidence of success's hollowness, but of its nature as a threshold rather than a destination. Each achievement is merely an invitation to the next level of becoming, and this endless horizon of growth can feel exhausting rather than exhilarating when glimpsed in its entirety. The fear of success contains within it a profound wisdom, the recognition that to achieve what you desire means becoming someone you haven't been before. The gap between these selves creates a vertigo that's far more destabilizing than the clean pain of failure. failure confirms what you know. Success confronts you with what you don't yet know about your own capabilities. Yet within this very fear lies the seed of its transcendence. What if the discomfort you feel at the edge of achievement isn't a warning, but an invitation? What if that vertigo is not the sensation of falling, but of flying, your system adjusting to new altitudes of possibility? Perhaps what you interpret as fear is actually your potential recognizing itself, stretching toward expression despite the discomfort of growth. The most revolutionary act isn't succeeding, but allowing yourself to succeed, granting yourself permission to outgrow the boundaries others have set for you, and, more critically, those you've internalized as your own. This permission isn't granted in grand declarations, but in quiet moments of choosing expansion over contraction, possibility over limitation, the unknown self over the familiar one. You stand before the canvas, brush in hand, the image clear in your mind, yet terror grips you. Not that you can't create it, but that you can. That the beauty you might bring forth would demand acknowledgement of the beauty within you. That your capability, once demonstrated, cannot be reclaimed as merely potential. This is the moment where success is either born or buried, in the microsecond where you either grant or deny yourself permission to become more than you have been. The philosopher Martin Buber spoke of I-thou relationships, encounters where we meet others in their full humanity rather than as objects or utilities. Yet many of us never establish this sacred relationship with our own potential, keeping it at arm's length, relating to it as concept rather than living reality. Success requires you to meet your capability intimately, to enter into relationship with parts of yourself that have remained theoretical rather than embodied. Consider the areas where you excel effortlessly, where time seems to stop, where your natural gifts express themselves without strain. Now notice your relationship to these talents, how often you dismiss them as just something I do, how readily you minimize what comes naturally to you. This devaluation isn't humility, but fear of the responsibility that would come with fully claiming and developing these gifts. The most persistent internal barrier to success isn't doubt about your ability, but doubt about your worthiness. The quiet, corrosive belief that you don't deserve to thrive, to be seen, to occupy space unapologetically. This unworthiness isn't something you consciously chose, but an inheritance, absorbed from a culture that distributes permission to succeed unevenly, from family systems that unconsciously replicate their own limitations, from early experiences that taught you to associate visibility with vulnerability. There's a particular kind of courage required, not for facing failure, but for facing fulfillment, the courage to accept joy without waiting for the other shoe to drop, to receive abundance without feeling you've stolen it, to allow good things without the compulsion to sabotage them. This courage doesn't roar, but whispers in the moments you choose expansion, despite the discomfort it brings. The most profound shift occurs not when you achieve external success, but when you revise your internal permission slips, those unconscious documents that dictate how much joy, recognition, abundance, and impact you're allowed to experience. Success isn't primarily about doing more, but about allowing more, expanding the bandwidth of what you believe you can receive and contain. Notice the subtle ways you maintain artificial ceilings on your own potential. The projects left 90% complete, the opportunities approached half-heartedly, the compliments deflected, the visibility avoided. These aren't random patterns, but sophisticated systems designed to keep you safely within the bounds of what your nervous system has decided is acceptable expansion. True growth requires gently renegotiating these boundaries. What if the fear you feel at the edge of success isn't warning you of danger, but of transformation? What if that discomfort is not a red light, but a green one, signaling not stop, but become? Perhaps the anxiety that arises as you approach your potential isn't protecting you from harm, but from growth. Growth that would require the death of limiting beliefs that, while painful, have been loyal companions on your journey thus far. The ultimate transcendence of the fear of success comes not from eliminating it, but from developing a different relationship with it. Recognizing fear not as an obstacle, but as a natural companion to growth, a sensation that accompanies expansion rather than prevents it. The question shifts from, how do I overcome this fear? To, how do I move forward with this fear as a respected advisor rather than an absolute authority? Imagine standing at the edge of your comfort zone, feeling that familiar constriction in your chest, the whispered warnings of your protective mind. Now imagine stepping forward, not because the fear has vanished, but because you've granted it a different role. No longer the director of your choices, but a consultant, offering caution that you acknowledge without being bound by. This is the subtle alchemy that transforms the fear of success from prison to portal. Jung spoke of individuation, the process of becoming more fully yourself, integrating both light and shadow aspects into a coherent whole. Success accelerates this process, bringing you into contact with disowned parts of yourself, your power, your brilliance, your capacity for impact. The fear you feel isn't of external achievement, but of this internal reconciliation, this reclaiming of aspects of yourself that have remained in shadow. Consider a moment when you allowed yourself to succeed despite the fear. When you published the work, accepted the position, entered the relationship, spoke the truth. Remember the person you became in that moment of choosing expansion over contraction. That version of you wasn't fearless, but fear-inclusive, capable of feeling trepidation without being defined by it, of acknowledging anxiety without being arrested by it. The most powerful reframe isn't seeing fear as an enemy, but as evidence that you're growing beyond your current self-concept. The discomfort you feel at the threshold of achievement isn't a warning sign, but a growing pain, the necessary stretch of becoming. What if you welcomed this sensation as confirmation that you're moving in the right direction, rather than away from it? There's a profound difference between fearlessness and courage. Fearlessness denies the reality of risk. Courage acknowledges it fully, yet moves forward anyway. True transcendence of the fear of success doesn't mean no longer feeling afraid, but developing the capacity to act in the presence of fear, to feel the weight of transformation and step forward anyway. Understanding that the discomfort is not a bug in the system, but a feature of growth. The path forward isn't about eliminating the fear of success, but about expanding your capacity to hold contradictory truths simultaneously. That success is both desirable and destabilizing. That visibility is both fulfilling and exposing. That becoming more fully yourself is both liberating and disorienting. This capacity to hold paradox without needing to resolve it is the hallmark of psychological maturity. What awaits beyond the fear isn't a state of perpetual confidence, but a more nuanced relationship with uncertainty. The ability to stand at the edge of your becoming and feel both trepidation and curiosity, both vulnerability and strength. This integration doesn't eliminate the tension of growth, but makes it bearable, even meaningful, transforming what was once paralyzing into something generative. The ultimate freedom comes not from escaping the fear of success, but from recognizing that you are larger than this fear, that your capacity for growth, for contribution, for meaning-making extends beyond the boundaries your protective mind has established. You can honor the fear as information without accepting it as limitation. Acknowledge its wisdom without granting it veto power over your expansion. Perhaps the most profound truth about the fear of success is that it's not actually about success at all, but about becoming, about the mysterious, magnificent, terrifying process of growing into the person you're capable of being. The achievements themselves are merely milestones on this more significant journey of self-actualization, markers that you're allowing yourself to expand beyond comfortable limitations into new territories of possibility. The fear you feel at the threshold of achievement isn't warning you away from some external danger, but inviting you into an internal revolution, a quiet, persistent call to become more fully yourself. And in this light, what once appeared as an obstacle reveals itself as a doorway. What felt like resistance transforms into a guide, leading you not away from your potential, but more deeply into it. The question was never whether you could succeed, but whether you would allow yourself to become the person that success would make of you. And the answer has always been within your reach, waiting in those moments when you choose expansion over contraction, growth over comfort, becoming over being. The fear doesn't disappear as you walk this path. It transforms, becoming not a wall, but a companion on the journey toward the person you're still in the process of becoming. In the quiet moments when you stand at the crossroads of who you are and who you might become, remember that your fear of success has always been a testament to your capacity for transformation. It speaks not of weakness, but of wisdom. The deep knowing that to achieve what calls to you means to shed the skin of familiarity and step naked into the light of your own becoming. This journey asks everything of you, yet promises something greater. Not the hollow achievement that the world applauds, but the sacred alignment with the truth of who you are beneath the layers of limitation. As you walk forward from this moment, may you recognize that the trembling you feel at the edge of your potential is not a warning, but a consecration. The beautiful, necessary quivering of a self on the verge of expansion. Your fear has never been your enemy, but a faithful guardian of the threshold between your known self and your possible self. Honor it, listen to it, and then gently, lovingly transcend it. Not because it was wrong, but because you are ready. The world awaits not your perfection, but your presence, fully embodied, gloriously flawed, and finally, fearlessly alive. If something in this journey resonated with your own silent battles with success, I invite you to share your reflection in the comments below. What part of yourself have you been holding back from becoming? What achievement have you approached and retreated from, feeling that strange, paradoxical fear? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to recognize their own pattern. And if these explorations into the deeper currents of the human experience speak to you, consider subscribing to join our community of seekers and sense-makers navigating the beautiful complexity of being human together. Thank you for the courage it took to sit with these reflections, to look unflinchingly at the ways you might be hiding from your own light. Your willingness to explore the shadows makes you exactly the kind of person this world needs more of.